Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Alex Avila with Love University, and we're back. I'm an author, psychologist, and speaker. Every week, we talk about how to love ourselves, others, and a higher nature, how to improve our career, finances, relationships, health, and spirituality. We have a very distinguished guest today, an esteemed guest. He's going to talk to us about very important and very, very serious issues. And this gentleman here is Dr. John Cobb. And by the way, he just turned, I believe, 97 years of age. Happy birthday, Dr. Cobb.
Thank you.
And he's a theologian, a philosopher, environmentalist. He's a preeminent scholar in what they call process philosophy and theology, and the author of over 50 books. He's a former professor, I guess, a current professor at Claremont College's 60 years there in theology. He holds 6 honorary doctorates. He has been elected to the Academy of Arts and Sciences. He's a co-founder for Process Studies, Center for Process Studies, with a launch of more than 30 related centers in academic institutions, including 23 in China. And he has recently launched his new project, Living Earth Movement. Welcome, Dr. Cobb, to the show. Cobb, before we get into it, you got so many theories. You know, I went a little crazy trying to research all this stuff that you have, which is really very profound. I want to ask you a question. You're just turned 97. How do you live a happy and long life?
I think the most important decision to make is who your parents will be.
Oh, okay. It's going to be fun to do that.
My mother made it to 102.
Incredible. Wow.
And my father died at 97.
That's amazing. So genetics, you believe. But, you know, we hear a lot of people that laugh a lot. You know, comedians often live late in life, and sometimes people in the religious world, spiritual world. I know you were born in Kobe, Japan. Your parents were missionaries. You came to the U.S. I believe you lived in Georgia. I think I detect a Southern accent there. And then you went to World War II. You said you lost your faith at some point, and then you got it back. So tell us a little about your journey. And has any of that helped you live a long life, do you think, having faith or all these things you're doing?
Well, I think another contribution to a long life is to have a happy family, and a happy family doesn't mean a family with no problems.
Okay. Okay.
But nevertheless, I've never had any anxieties that my wife would be unfaithful to me or that she would leave me, and I think that makes a difference. And I've had wonderful students that have always enjoyed my teaching very much.
Yes.
I think that all those things help. So I'm a very fortunate person.
Yes.
Just to describe my good fortune, I'll mention that I have 7 great-grandchildren.
Wow.
And they all live within an hour's drive.
That's incredible, especially in our commuter society. That's really cool. And where do you live? Are you in California now, or are you in some other?
I live in Claremont, California.
Oh, wow, you're very close to us.
In Claremont, there are a number of retirement communities. I live in the one that's called Pilgrim Place. I
see. Have you heard of Mihaly, that did positive flow work, psychology? He's a positive psychologist. I think he was at Claremont for a while.
Oh.
Dr. Mihaly.
Well, the name sounded faintly familiar, but I wasn't going to say because I don't know.
Okay. Well, so research does show that marital stability, a happy marriage, can increase longevity, and like you said, family, and supporting those kind of things. Now, in terms of your theories, you got a lot of interesting theories and work you've done. Religious pluralism, I look at it as kind of complementary religions, transformational, I think is what you call it. Where you can get insight into your religion by looking at other religions. For example, maybe Buddhism, you can meditate. If you're a Christian, you can meditate to Christ or to God, the God that you believe in. But you can look at other religions as well, kind of almost like an integration, but at least adapting things. And you have what you call process theology, which is kind of like becoming or changing, which is transformational, where the universe changes by actors of free will. So tell us a little bit about that to our lay audience here.
Well, in my view, to be a Christian today is to be open to all truth wherever it may be found, and open to all good practices. That doesn't mean you can practice everything.
Yes.
And it just means that the idea that to be faithful to Jesus means that you close your mind to
what other people have said, to me, that's idolatry rather than faith.
Mm-hmm. Now, are you were you a minister, a pastor? Do you have any official titles in your time?
Yes, I was ordained.
Okay, so you're, I guess, a minister, they call you.
I have only, my experience as a pastor is very limited, but I do have some.
I see. Now, the interesting thing about
I'm bragging, I could say I served 7 churches, but that was all at one time.
Okay, well, that's pretty good. Seven's a lucky number, by the way, I think.
That was a half-time job.
Okay, I see. Now, process theology is pretty interesting. Now, some of it seems kind of non-traditional. Now, from the stuff I was reading and looking at some of your past work, you say things like God is not omnipotent because God is a persuader and not a coercer. So in other words, humans have free will, and God kind of guides us. So tell us about that part. That God is not necessarily omnipotent in the sense that he forces you to do things.
Well, I think that the doctrine of omnipotence is one of the greatest mistakes the church ever made. It is not in the Bible. People think it's in the Bible because in the Latin translation of a Hebrew name, the term,
Yahweh?
the word used was Almighty. Yes. But there's no reason. I've asked Jewish rabbis about it. They said, well, the name suggests mountains. It's like the Grand Tetons, and why the tits should be turned into omnipotence. I know something about why in the 5th century or whatever it was that happened.
Right.
But nobody believes it. And I think to have doctrines that nobody believes is a very unhealthy situation.
Well, I mean, some people look at God as a parental figure that can protect them and take care of them. And there's maybe a little of that omnipotence idea. But you're saying is more of a guide or a loving, protector. How do you visualize God in this way?
Well, I think that the Jewish tradition and Jesus, even more emphatically than most Jews, thought of God very much as a parental figure. The term Abba, which is the way Jesus addressed, and that just the closest approximation we have to that is Papa.
Okay.
And that's it's a term of intimacy, not a term, but it's respect, of course, and it doesn't mean that you don't love your Papa.
Yes, exactly. But it does say in Proverbs to fear the Lord, but fear is not necessarily like fright, is it? How do you translate the word fear in Proverbs?
I really think that the word fear for a long time, even in the English language, didn't have the connotation of being scared. It had the connotation of great respect.
Yes, respect. I see. And then we still have free will as humans. You're saying, I guess, to screw up if you need to, if you do it, or to do well. And God is there as a guide. Now, the other thing, Dr. Cobb, is interesting about this process theology is that there's a statement that God is changing based on interaction with humans, and also feeling. There's an emotional component.
Yes.
And you mentioned Jesus as a fellow sufferer who can understand. So someone who's very compassionate, empathetic. So the God is, sense, feeling. And when in the Old Testament, God appears to be sometimes a jealous, jilted lover in some way when the Jewish people went to idols. So there's great pain expressed. And also we know in the Kabbalah religion, mysticism, they talk about the fact that our actions on earth can affect the divine, and there's an interrelationship there. So tell us about that part of it, because that's something people may not think about. You think God is just the way it is always, but you're saying it can transform.
Well, I think that if God did not change, there'd be no point in praying to God, would there? It's common sense, and it's what the vast majority of people believe until they get asked, and then they remember that they were told God was immutable. Well, again, that has nothing to do with the biblical God. This is the God
created in the Roman Empire.
I think you said anthropomorphic. Is that attributing human qualities to something? Is that the term?
Yes. And I think there's no question but that the Bible thinks of God in anthropomorphic terms. Of course, anybody who uses anthropomorphic language and so forth, if asked, does that mean God is just a great big human being? No one would say so.
Okay.
But I think the anthropomorphism is a good place to start, and then of course, but of course, in God's case, it's this and this. In our case, it's this and this. There's a relationship between the creator and the created.
Yes. So do you believe that, and we'll get into this later about ecological issues, but do you believe that God is looking down on us, and if we're not doing well with ecology, that God is upset? Can God get mad? Does God get happy?
Well, strictly speaking, I think that God feels all of our feelings with us. So God has perfect empathy. Now, if he's empathizing with human anger, he would feel it, but he would feel it as human anger.
I see. Well, human anger, some people are angry that others are not taking care of the environment, and some people don't care. So is God empathizing with those who are angry or upset about it in this case?
I think God would be empathetic with everyone, whatever they're feeling. And I'm quite sure that God's aim is to have as much value in the universe as possible. And this planet has made possible vast advances over the other planets in this. We don't know when we talk about the universe as a whole, how many habitable planets there are.
Yes.
But I think God has worked to create enormous richness, both in the variety and in the intensity of feeling. And I don't think that God likes our reducing that, destroying that.
Well, if you created a beautiful thing, you want to keep it beautiful, I would imagine.
Beauty is a very, very important part of it.
Yes. And speaking of that, I think here's another, at least non-traditional, that may surprise some people idea, that you say that morality is not subservient to aesthetics. I guess the idea that you have to be good, if not you go to hell, and so forth. And you're saying it's more of a evolution of being beautiful in the spiritual sense, I imagine. Higher, kinder person, more compassionate. How do you see that part of the process?
Well, I think that the world is basically constituted of feeling. And of course, feeling doesn't exclude thinking. But the Bible talks very extensively about love.
Yes.
God loves us, and the fundamental commandment to us is to love God and our neighbor.
With all your heart and soul.
And that's all feeling. So that it seems to me the Bible is about feeling to a large extent.
Yes. So when we say the word aesthetics, you mean beautiful feeling, these higher, love feelings.
Yes.
But as opposed to being afraid that if I mess up, I'm going to, I'm going to hell or that kind of, or if I do good, I'm going to heaven. So you don't believe in those absolutes necessarily, you're saying?
I think that love is very, what should I say? If God loves us, God is not going to cause us to be worse off after we die in any way that is dependent upon God.
Yes.
Who we become already in this life, there are people who become extremely miserable. And I don't think that when they die, even if they say, oh, I believe in the Trinity and so forth, that suddenly their actual reality is going to be dramatically changed in a positive way.
Yeah. I wrote a book, Invincible You, on positive psychology. I said that your heaven or hell begins here on earth. and that may be carried on, this energy to wherever, the higher places, the energy. So we have a kind of alignment here of ideas. It's kind of interesting.
Good.
Now, you also, in one of your earlier appearances, you were talking about different ways to look at religion, I guess, or spirituality. One is the exclusive or absolutes, which is, mine is the best, and if you don't have it, you have no salvation. And then we have a one extreme. The other extreme is every religion is the same. We're all good, which doesn't really account for differences. And then you said yours is more of a transformational. We realize there are differences, but then, they can collaborate, work together in some ways. You can draw elements from them. So tell us about the transformational approach to looking at religion.
I think if you begin by recognizing that even within Christianity, there's lots of diversity. And of course, some of it is just better and worse. I don't think we should withdraw judgments altogether. But I think that different traditions within Christianity have made great different contributions. And diversity is something to be celebrated.
Yes.
And diversity with other religious traditions that have profoundly different orientations is even more enriching. And I personally find that being a disciple of Jesus calls for one to speak the truth, to listen to truth, to obey, to believe what makes sense to believe, and constantly develop it in light of all that other people say, whether the other people are scientists or people of other faiths, or just people who have wonderful common sense. Common sense, I frankly think science has lost touch with common sense too much. And I have more confidence in, the business about determinism, that's not common sense. Nobody believes it.
Well, Dr. Cobb, I really like your analysis of religions. I believe you studied Buddhism. You work with people in the Buddhist tradition, which is a very beautiful religion. But you said there are differences. There may be some similar with Christianity. The difference you're saying, Buddhism looks within and also focuses on the moment. They're not really that future or past oriented. Whereas Christianity, they look to the future, to the future kingdom, for example. Also, they look at history and also external things, for example, justice in society and compassion in society, which some Buddhists may do that as well. And then you're saying that Jesus actually helped stop the Jews from being massacred by Romans. So there was actually a real practical purpose at the time through peace and love. So nonviolence, for example, which is, the Gandhi's approach as well, Martin Luther King.
I think it's quite important to say the most effective disciple of Jesus was the Hindu.
Yes, interesting. The Hindi, in terms of, you mean that approach, you're saying?
Well, people think it's so, some Christians think it's so important to be a Christian.
Right.
I think that we can all learn immensely from Jesus. I frankly think the salvation of the world depends upon our learning from Jesus. So this is not a minor point, but
yes.
Being a Christian, if that means believing certain creeds and belonging to particular institutions, that may or may not be important. I think it was more, Gandhi's following Jesus was more important than a great many people who believe all kinds of orthodox things.
I see. I think you said you're a follower of Jesus and not necessarily a Christian, but in the traditional sense.
Because I know so many people who think if you are not a good Trinitarian, that you're not a Christian. And that means that Jesus and Paul are not good Christians. The Bible is not a Christian book. So I think I have plenty of good company. The creeds are formulated in what we call substance categories. We're using this is philosophical. And process thought rejects substances. And so I can't possibly be a Trinitarian if that means adhering to beliefs that depend upon the notion of substances.
If you're Trinitarian, you mean the God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit, the three parts of God?
Strictly speaking, it should be God, Christ, rather than Jesus, because Jesus is, in these Orthodox formulations, Jesus is both human and divine. And the human is not part of the Trinity. Personally, this is not what I think is important, but
I see. But I think what you're saying is that we can draw in some ways from other religions or paths to enhance our own spirituality.
yeah,
Some things that are very beautiful. And the idea of Buddhism, you've heard the phrase, beware the second arrow. The first arrow is whatever happens to you. Let's say you're late for an appointment. And then the second arrow is your emotional reaction to it, which can make it worse. And that can cause more pain.
yes,
So, in cognitive psychology, we talk about irrational thoughts, changing your thoughts and changing your feelings and behaviors. So I think that's a very powerful concept. Beware the second thought that comes, to perceive the negativity to it. But I think with Christianity, the second thought could be love, right? Or maybe it could be compassion. Someone cuts you off on the road. Some people, the second thought is, oh, that, such and such, and they get very angry. Or they can say maybe compassionately they're late to a funeral, or maybe they have to go to the hospital and pick someone up. Which changes your mindset, right? Because now you bring empathy and compassion into the equation, and you are, you're more peaceful, right? You're more accepting. Have you ever found that to be the case in your walk?
well, I think that the philosophy I follow is very much like the philosophy of Buddhism. And I think that the Bible is much more oriented to stories and history than it is to ontological substances. I think once you think of God in terms of substance, you make God fundamentally non-relational, whereas the biblical God is very relational.
When you say relational, you mean in a personal, level where you can understand the person?
Where if we feel that God is within us at all times and is participating in constituting our being.
Yes.
See, I think God is incarnate in everything.
Very powerful. I like that. I think these are very powerful concepts here. And I think we need that today in our society. People are lonely. Some people staying home a lot. They're afraid, the virus, health issues and economic issues. So, finding that love, and Love University, we talk a lot about loving yourself, others, and the higher nature.
Yeah.
So it's a three-part model that we're looking at. And then in your newest work, or actually you've done this for many years, but now you expanded it with the environmental issues. And you have all interesting terms. You talk about environmental ethics, ecological civilization, Earthism, and then your new movement, you have a new website, Living Earth Movement. And you talk about the preservation and restoration of the Earth and its inhabitants as being more important than, say, making money. There's, some businesses, that's what they want to do.
Yeah.
And we know Native Americans, have this belief that even inanimate objects have a spirit that we should revere.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting. And of course, with global warming and all these things that are going on, dangers of climate, biodiversity, and the term environmental degradation that's going on. Tell us about that. How did all this come and play? Did you begin this in the 60s and 70s, or is it something new for you?
Well, I think that I always felt that God was in nature as well as in human beings, so that wasn't new. But until 1969, 1959. Which am I trying to say? I had not thought of this as theologically important. So it hit me hard that to realize that our anthropocentrism was not simply saying that God loves human beings in a very special way, but it was implying that other things exist only for our sake. And it never occurred to me that my dog existed only for my sake. I thought I existed partly for the dog's sake.
Interesting.
So, but I hadn't ever thought of articulating that theologically.
Yes, I see. Now we're joined here by one of our listeners, Mr. Daniel. Daniel, could you turn your camera on for us and say hello?
Hello.
Hi. Daniel's an environmentalist, and he's going to ask a question of you in a little bit, if that's okay with you, Dr. Cobb. He's very eager to learn more about what you're doing. Now, one thing I noticed that you and your son created a new index. You call it the Index of Sustainable Economic Welfare.
Yes.
We have the GDP or the GNP, Gross National Product, which is based on economics. We're also calculating the effects that these new businesses can have on the environment too. That can maybe even hurt it. And there's a cost and benefit. So what's going on with that? Why is this a new measure that can help people?
Well, I think that the GDP is about the most stupid way of measuring progress that one could get. Mm. It simply measures the increase of market activity.
Right.
And if a city burns down, that doesn't subtract from the GDP, but all the money that you spend rebuilding the city, that adds. So after the city burns down, and the GDP is wonderful, but does that mean we are better off? It's a hard stretch to justify, I think.
Yes.
But there are many other features which, even in standard economic journals, are critiqued or limitations are pointed out. So we did not introduce into the genuine, it is now called the Genuine Progress Indicator, so GPI.
Okay.
But ISEW is what we called it originally. We didn't introduce anything into that could not be justified from existing literature as being a more accurate indication of actual improvement. And I sent it to 4 mainstream economists, not minor figures, and asked them, I paid them to critique it. And the only criticism that I got was that we did not have a figure for the positive value of leisure.
Oh, interesting.
And that would have, of course, made it even more different. So,
I see.
So economists don't have good reasons for not using it. They just, frankly, they're too bound up with the capitalist system.
I see.
And the capitalist system would be modified significantly if we paid attention to the costs.
That makes sense. In some societies, they used to have the siesta, you may have heard about, where everything shuts down and people sleep and relax and then come back to work. And they're more productive, actually, and maybe more content in a sense.
Yeah.
So leisure, I think, is a big issue. In our society, Western society, the U.S., everyone's rushing, right? And I think the problem is now with the internet, now with the virus, people staying home, they're working even more than they used to work because it's 24/7. Does that sound right for you, Mr. Daniel?
Yeah.
Okay, I think this guy's always working, which is good and bad. People, if you love your work, is good, but you never have a mental break. The monkey mind. You've heard that term, Dr. Cobb, in the Eastern philosophy. The chattering mind. We're always thinking of everything. And now going back to the ecological aspect of things, you also tie it into the spiritual aspect, even the religious aspect. We see that Noah, he didn't just save the humans, he saved animals too, right? So he put the animals on the ark. And then we had the year of the Sabbath and the Jubilee, where the land rests for a period of time, right? No plowing is done, kind of give nature a chance to recuperate. And then the famous parable is that with Jesus, the rich young man, he said, sell everything and follow me. And the rich young man was sad, he left. And Jesus says, it is easier for a camel to get through the eye of a needle than for the rich man to enter the kingdom. And then people are surprised, how's that possible? The rich people should be able to get there. He says, with man is not possible, with God it is possible. Now, I want to ask you, because you're doing theology a lot. Now, some people say that means that money is bad and root of all evil. And some people say that you need to depend on God to get to the kingdom and not just rely on riches. So what is your take on that parable?
Well, I think Jesus is very explicit, probably the most emphatic statement about almost any issue that he made was you cannot serve both God and mammon. Mammon is basically money. That doesn't mean money is bad. It means that it is not the judge of whether things are good or bad. Money can be used for good purposes. Money can be used for bad purposes. It is instrumental. But we have actually turned into, the theology of the United States today is taught in the departments of economics. And it's a very bad theology.
Yeah, the idea that
it's destroying the world.
Right. I think you saw the economism, or the term you use.
Yes.
Economy. The money making is the number one goal. Now, one thing you've done is very fascinating. You worked a lot with China, and over the years, you founded in 2005 the Institute for Postmodern Development of China, dealing with, working east and west, ecological, saving the ecology. And you wrote a letter on October 21st last year to President Biden and President of China, Xi Jinping, if I pronounce that correctly. And you're talking about, you want them to work together and cooperate for the ecology, for the environment, and things like that. And you, first of all, you thanked China. You said that basically there've been a lot of improvements over there. They're working for an ecological society. You say that the governors in the rural the areas are actually promoting ecological growth versus economic growth in some ways.
Not versus in the case of China.
Not versus, but they're doing both.
Both at
the same time. And then also you're saying that they've reduced population, they reduced poverty. More people are moving back into the rural areas as well. And China is ready to help the world in this way. And then also cutting back on coal. So these are all good things. And you say, hey, let's be friends. However, there's animosity, unfortunately, toward China. Some people, because of either they blame it for the virus or trade issues. And Daniel, you had a question on this.
Yeah, sure. So obviously we know that anybody who's got their head in books and news and things, that China is intrinsically entwined with the US in terms of trade relations and things like that. But for a more common perspective, for somebody who kind of just takes rhetoric for what it is, how would you say we could get someone to be in support of a China-US partnership in the same way we had in World War II era, where we had common interests and allyship, not necessarily a lockstep agenda, but there was at least a common enemy formation that we combated against.
And Dr. Cobb was in World War II, right, Dr. Cobb? You fought over there. So what do you think of Daniel's question?
What do I think of what?
Oh, I see his question. Can you?
His question. Well, I will try to say I think it is possible for two people to cooperate, even if they don't like each other.
Like a husband and wife, maybe? Or
I think it's a lot better if they like each other. So I'm not trying to put down liking. And I think that the Chinese are likable people, and I think Americans are likable people. I don't think there's any problem. We don't have to agree about everything in order to agree that saving the world from self-destruction is important. Now, there are lots of people who would, nod their heads, oh yes, of course, saving the world is important. But then they go right on living in a way that is destroying the world. But if we really think saving the world is important, it surely is more important than any of the issues between the US and China. And I think that the Chinese government, if properly approached, would be quite cooperative. And the remarkable thing, whether our letter had anything to do with it or not, but there is a committee, and John Kerry is the leader of the American side, that is meeting with the goal of giving leadership in the world. And if they really will do this, but I'm not optimistic, because the American people are being told every day that China is villainous. Everything China does is demonized. We do this with our enemies. The people who follow Trump do this with respect to the people who are against Trump, and the people who are against Trump do this with respect to Trump. So we are exposed to the propaganda of enmity all the time.
Okay.
In this country.
I see.
And I would like very much, both in relationship to China and in relationship to the Trumpites and the anti-Trumpites, if we would stop doing it. I mean, some of the things that are said about bad things about China are true. Some of the bad things about Biden are true. Some of the bad things about Trump are true. But that doesn't mean you have to talk only about the bad things. In fact, I think we generally get along better in human society if we emphasize the positive rather than emphasizing the negative.
That's a good point.
So
you're building a bridge of friendship, that is your aim, and also talk to people. Maybe this podcast can help people understand, right? That you can, like you said, work together, even if you're not 100%, on the same thing. But on certain areas, you can work together.
That's right. And I think we could work together with China on a lot of things. I don't know that there's anybody I completely agree with, but I have a lot of friends I work with.
True.
And I'm not a friend of President Xi, and I'm not a friend of President Biden. I haven't met either one of them.
Okay.
And I consider friendship has to have some actual content to it.
Okay. Right.
But
have they responded to the letters or not yet?
no, I'll never get a response. But the remarkable thing is that I called for 3 things and they all happened.
Oh.
And the first one was that Biden made the statement. You see, Biden had said, please help us. We want help on global climate.
Yes.
But at the same time, 10 times as often as he would ask for some cooperation, he said, China is our #1 enemy.
Oh, you said that? Okay.
If you keep saying China is #1 enemy, and you're the most powerful nation in the world, and you have enough bombs to wipe out the entire population of China several times over, you make Chinese a little nervous.
I see what you're saying. So it's kind of a give and take. Is like you're saying good things, but you're saying bad things.
That's right. So Biden did make a public statement that we should be saying China is our #1 competitor. Now, whether my urging him to do so had anything to do with it, I don't know. But,
okay. Who knows? Maybe he read it some night,
And then I said to the President Xi that any gesture that Biden makes in a friendly way will be costly to him politically. So please keep that in mind. And even if he doesn't do much, jump at the positive element.
I see. Now, don't you know the vice president of China? I think I said somewhere.
I do. I know the man who presides, who is the regular presider in the Chinese parliament.
Okay.
I do consider him a friend.
So you have some relationship there. Okay.
And he is, many people think of him as the vice president of China.
I see.
Yeah.
That's great. So you found them to be good people, warm people, the Chinese?
He incidentally is not a communist.
Oh, okay.
There are 4 parties in the parliament.
I didn't know that.
I think if you just examine the details, China is not quite the same thing as people describe,
I
there's no question the Communist Party is the center of power in China. I'm not,
right.
I don't want to say, but the governors of the states and have some power, and the politically elected parliament, a lot of things are left to the elected people, but they cannot take steps that would antagonize or be contrary to. So it's one-sided. I'm definitely not a democracy. It doesn't pretend to be, but.
Right. But Dr. Cobb,
the people of China have more confidence in their government than the people of the United States have in our government.
Okay. Interesting.
And so you can't just say it's a failure in terms of serving the people.
Right. Well, Dr. Cobb, you have such a broad base of knowledge. I'm very amazed today. You're talking about politics, philosophy, spirituality, psychology, science. And Mr. Daniel here had a follow-up question.
Yes.
I'll give you a small background, then he can fill in. He has kind of a similar background to you. His father was a minister. I think he grew up in fairly traditional, maybe fundamentalist kind of background, and he actually lost his faith, and I think he still lost it. Tell us a little bit about that, Daniel, in your question.
Sure. So my father is a Lutheran minister. He started out in New Jersey, in a small church in South Jersey, moved over to Pennsylvania, started a family, and here we are now. I'd come to the realization in my teen years that I was not really a religious person anymore, and had that talk with my father in years after that point, probably around college years, where I realized I was not really a religious or spiritual person in the same sense he is, with his life work as a pastor. But of course now, in my work in psychological work and therapy and things, a lot of clients will default to religion and things. So it's definitely relevant to me for a lot of ways for, self-soothing and purpose and hope and things like that. And there's also some people as well who find themselves lacking faith and wanting it back. So they find themselves in moments of desperation, and they find church, certainly, but they may not have a rebuilding of that faith that happens back to them. So my question to you then is, as somebody who had went one way and then back in your life, what was the process of restoring your faith?
And also, can you help Daniel restore his faith? Not possible.
People try. They do try.
Well, the thing they were trying to convert him, but he doesn't want to do it. But you can't be forced, right?
Obviously, we're not going to do that now. But I would say that examine all of the prejudices of society, and that would include all kinds of beliefs about God. That so many people worship an idol and call it God. And I believe that if you look at the reasons that our culture has turned away from God, so that to believe in God is now countercultural. There are good reasons, because many of the beliefs that their people are rejecting should be rejected. Okay? But if you ask, is there evidence for there being a cosmic spirit that loves? There is evidence. Scientists have found evidence. Scientists have found so much evidence that they have invented the idea that there must be thousands of cosmoses or universes. It's not a very clearly statable view. The universe is everything there is. How can there be multiple everythings there are? But anyway, the fact that they have found it necessary in order to avoid affirming God to invent thousands of things for which there is no evidence whatsoever should at least say that they don't have any real reason not to believe in God.
And I'm hoping that people will just stop being prejudiced and start asking, what's the evidence?
So keep an open mind is what you're saying. Neither deny or accept without.
There is so much dogmatism, and there's much more dogmatism in the university than there is in the church.
Mm-hmm. Right. And then you talk about pluralistic, I mean, religion looking at all different elements of different paths, right? Different faiths.
That's right.
And
I think that Christianity has an advantage, that the historical approach enables one, and in fact, it requires one to be constantly readjusting. If you think in terms of what is it that needs to be done now, and that's different from what needed to be done 20 years ago. What can you believe now? Well, the discovery of the fine-tuning of the universe is something that took place, 30, 40 years ago. Prior to that, one could argue that the evidence was against God. I don't think that there really was evidence against God, but it was much harder to say that science provides evidence for God.
Dr. Cobb, what if Daniel says, I still am an atheist, I think, or whatever, agnostic or whatever, but can he still do good without being a Christian? You were going to say that, Daniel? Something like that?
Yeah, I was wondering if you give any sort of levity towards the postmodern idea that faith is not required for good deeds or good acts.
Yeah, well, some kind of belief system is required. If you try not to believe anything, you don't know whether you have any responsibility or not. You don't know whether you should be concerned about your neighbor or not. I mean, if you really become an agnostic about everything, I don't think that anything very positive results. Okay. But a lot of people hold on to all kinds of features of Christianity when they give up God. The tendency, if they don't really work at the job of thinking about it and figuring what the world is really like, is that it fades. So that as it has become the standard, I mean, the university as such is an atheist organization. And as more people are educated in an atheist organization, I think the level of concern for others has declined in the United States.
So you think there's more of a selfishness? Like, what if people say, I don't care about the environment, I just want to make a lot of money?
That's right.
What do you say to people like that?
Well, I don't blame you for that. That's why you were told to go to college. The whole society encourages you to think that making money is the most important thing. But think about it a little while. Is it more important to make money than it is to leave a world to your children that they can inhabit? Do you really believe that? I mean, if people were really asked what they really believe,
yes,
then we'd be much better off.
Yes.
But for a long time, it was the church that was mainly guilty of getting people to say they believed things that they didn't believe.
I see.
But now it's the university that does that. And I think...
Doctor, you were in the university for 60 years. How can you say that about your own university?
Yeah. Well, I have been greatly helped by the philosophy of Alfred North Whitehead. And Whitehead's philosophy is so much deeper and more profound. It provides so much better understanding of the nature of science and why science is so important, but what it can and cannot do, that the only way the university has been able to deal with it is to exclude it. But it doesn't exclude it by refutation, it just excludes it by dogmatics.
Yeah. Dr. Cobb, you're quite an interesting figure. You have so much knowledge and wisdom. Daniel, what did you think of Dr. Cobb's answers?
I thought it was enlightening. I thought you gave me some practical answers I can use for when I talk to other people. Certainly, you haven't converted me yet, but it's all right. Maybe one day I'll come around. All right.
We'll see. One day you might, join Dr. Cobb in China or something, right? Who knows?
Maybe.
After for 20 years, people have been telling you one thing, but just hearing an opposite statement is not going to convince you.
Not enough here.
Sure.
But we'll see. But anyways, Dr. Cobb, can Daniel come to your birthday party? He's going to have a 97th Zoom birthday party. It's coming up, Dr. Cobb?
No, that was on Tuesday morning.
You had it already? Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
The Cobb Institute has a meeting every Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock.
Okay.
And they did all kinds of things that should have waited for my 100th birthday.
Wow. Well, either way, it's good, right?
I mean, it was too much. But then on my actual birthday, which was the next day in the evening,
right,
there was a celebration in China.
Wow.
Wow.
It's cool.
And China is where I really have a following.
Wow, you have a love for China, and they have love for you too. That's wonderful.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, Daniel, thanks for joining us. I'll let you go. Thanks for dropping by. You're one of our great listeners, Daniel.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Have a wonderful day.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Dr. Cobb, I'm thinking about this stuff about spirituality, and people have said that love is the universal, either religion or spirituality. It's the fundamental core. And we look at agape, unconditional love through the Christian religion, karuna, compassion,
yes,
through Buddhism, and bhakti, devotion, through the Hinduism. And even Islam, they say that God loves us so much that he put attributes of love in us.
yes.
So these are all amazing things. And do you believe that love can be considered one of the highest forms of spirituality?
Yes.
Yes, you do.
Yes, I am more interested in people loving other people than in people engaging in what is usually called spiritual exercises. But spiritual exercises can lead to overcoming the obstacles to love.
Yes.
Yes, that's right.
Yes, yeah. And I was going to ask you, do you have any spiritual exercises? Do you pray, meditate? What do you do that you can tell our listeners and audience?
Yeah. I'm not myself one who has engaged in spiritual exercise. Of course, I pray.
Yes.
But I don't do it in that kind of sustained way. I try to be open to God and to really let go and let God.
It's pretty powerful.
And so that's a kind of spiritual exercise, but it's
yes. Yeah,
but
open to God. Yes.
I think God is in me. I think God is calling me in every moment to do what is appropriate to do in that moment. I think God's wisdom is much greater than mine.
We had Neil Donald Walsh on the show. You've heard of the Conversations with God. He wrote a bunch of bestsellers. He said he's constantly talking to God. The question is whether you're listening or God talks to us. And that's important. Are you going to heaven, Dr. Cobb?
Well, I think that again, it's a matter of evidence, isn't it? And I think the evidence is that death does not end at all. There are just too many people who have reconnected with people who have died, and then too many people who, after being dead for a few minutes, come back to life.
Yes.
I think the evidence is strong. The word heaven is probably gets more in the way, but I was with my uncle when he died, and I was just deeply moved that the last thing he said, "Oh, it's so beautiful."
Wow.
So I have absolutely no fear of death.
I was going to ask you about that because a lot of people do have fear of death.
I'm ready to go anytime.
Wow.
I have. I really would be more ready to go if I were not having so many opportunities You see, there are more people interested in what I have to say
Yes.
in the last 2 years than there were the rest of my life.
That's amazing. That's kind of an amazing story.
Because I've been talking about how bad the situation was and how wrong we were to keep doing the things that were leading to our self-destruction, and most people have not been interested in hearing it. But now people are recognizing that it really is true.
Yes, because you wrote the book, Is It Too Late?
Yes.
What, in the 70s, right? So you're kind of prophetically looking at now, and now is the time. And
I think in all those respects, I'm more biblical than the fundamentalists.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But that doesn't mean that I think the Bible is an inerrant and infallible book. I think that's idolatry rather than. But
I see.
But the prophetic principle is extremely important.
Yes.
The historical orientation is extremely important. Jesus' teaching that we should love even our enemies is extremely important.
Right.
And the teaching that we should not worship money is extremely important. And now those are not the only things I think are extremely important, but they are so badly needed in our world today that.
So if you can read it just
I don't know how the world can be saved without Jesus. So
it's powerful. Yeah, I mean, if you just read it for the powerful message, the like I said, the principles, that's by itself is life changing, right? The Bible, I'm saying, as opposed to some people like the stories and things like that. But you say, the messages are powerful, the profound ideas. And they say in some cultures, they mourn when someone is born because they say you're forcing an infinite soul into a finite body, but they celebrate when they're liberated. But as long as you complete your mission in life, right, your purpose on earth, and I think I like the idea of leaving a lasting legacy of goodness and love. And Dr. Cobb, I believe you're doing that. You're leaving a lasting legacy of love and goodness. That's very beautiful, and really I've enjoyed having you on today. I'm glad you took the time. And I believe that you have a website. Is it Last Living Earth Movement? Is that
yes, the website has just been completed.
Wow, thank God. Thank.
Yes.
And what is the website? Is it called livingearthmovement.com or something like that?
Yes.
Okay, and then I know you have a lot of books and all available on Amazon and all that stuff. And you have your institutes. And you're working with a lot of important people, I noticed on your website. These are like philosophers and scientists and things and professors that are with you. And you want to help, change the world, help save the environment, and also work with China, as you said, right? The superpowers. And is there anything next coming up that we should be looking about? We'd love to have you back on again, by the way, if you'd like to do this again and talk more about it.
Well, I would be delighted if people would think about getting a more realistic picture of China. But if you feel enmity toward China, okay, feel enmity, but then remember that loving your enemy is a very different matter from despising your enemy.
Yes, because even your child, you can give bread to your child who you love, but to give it to the enemy, that's hard to give the bread.
That's right.
Says Jesus. But it's rewarding to do it, right?
But I really think that if you love your enemy, it ceases to be enmity. And you really look for ways of helping, and helping may mean changing. You understand, this is not a matter of saying, think everybody is fine like they are and just leave them alone.
Yes.
But I find that China is more open and more ready to make needed changes than the United States is. So the kind of self-righteousness of a lot of the propaganda is upsetting to me.
I see. Well, like I said, love is the solution. Like, when you love others, you also love yourself. It's like it's bidirectional.
Yes.
You actually feel more joyous. And when you hate, you're angry, you're tense, right? You're stressed, blood pressure goes up. So even for personal health benefits, right, it's better to have loving energy, compassion.
Yes.
To relieve suffering of others, empathy, to put yourself in their shoes.
And for the sake of your children, really to
Yes.
cooperating with
Yes.
with the other great world power
Exactly.
in leading
Exactly.
the world to make the radical changes that are needed,
Of course.
is something I hope all of us will do.
Definitely. Plus, I love Chinese food, by the way, but I don't know. Do you like Chinese food or no?
Oh, yes.
It's great. Well, Dr. Cobb, it's been a wonderful pleasure having you on board. Again, we'd love to have you some other time, and I know you have a lot of projects going on. Until next time, we send you loving energy to you and your family. Agape.
Thank you.
Without equivocation. Have a wonderful night. Until next time. This is Dr. Alex Avila, Love University. Reach us at 310-226-8090 for any questions for Dr. Cobb. loveuniversitylove@gmail.com. Visit us at loveuniversity.love. Until next time, this is Dr. Alex Avila, Love University. Put away your notebooks, your iPads, your phones. And Dr. Cobb, co-professor today. We are now dismissing the class.
Thank you.
That was a great interview with Dr. Cobb, a fascinating man. I was a young man, I guess spiritually young, 97 years old. And he talked about so many things: psychology, spirituality, the ecology, the environment, politics. But I think fundamentally he's saying that love is a key. Loving yourself to be able to help others, loving others, and loving a higher nature, whether you call it God or spirit or whatever it might be. And he's got a great project helping save land, save nature, and save the world and the earth, in a sense, living earth movement. So if you want to reach us and talk to us about today's show, if you have any show questions or show ideas, you can write to us at loveuniversitylove@gmail.com. Call us at 310-226-8090. Visit us at loveuniversity.love. You can also like us on Facebook and Instagram and follow us at Love University Podcast. Follow us on Twitter at LoveLetterU Podcast. Also, our sister podcast, Invincible You, which has a lot of fascinating topics similar to this, transformation. You can follow us and like us on Instagram and Facebook at Invincible You Official. Follow us there at InvincibleU_. And for both podcasts, you can subscribe to us on Podbean, Spotify, SoundCloud, and iTunes. So again, saving the environment is really saving you, because you are the environment. The inner takes the outer affects the inner. And through love and through sharing with other people, we can change the world. We can transform ourselves and transform the world at the same time. Until next time, this is Dr. Alex Avila, Love University. Put away your notebooks, your iPads, your phones, and we'll see you on the next